asking if the UK should quit the European Human Rights Treaty. 0207 862 2222 is the number for your calls and your views on this. We're asking because Boris Johnson wants a referendum on whether we should quit the treaty, formerly known as the European Convention on Human Rights. The former Prime Minister thinks that it's time for the public to have their say on this divisive topic. But why is it so controversial? Well, let's look at it. So the Human Rights Treaty was drafted. This was in the aftermath of the Second World War. So it was in the wake of the Holocaust. It was in order to set out a series of essential rights, and British lawyers were very much heavily involved in the original writing of this. There are 46 countries who are signed up to the treaty. There is also a European court with 46 judges, as you can see here. And this court ensures that the member countries uphold the treaty's principles and laws. Now, there is one judge representing each member country. So there is one British judge who sits on that court. I actually don't think I could point him out there, but he's there. However, some dislike the treaty and its courts. Critics like Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage, for example, they want us to leave. They believe that it takes control and power away from British courts and politicians, and it hinders our ability to deport migrants. So what do you think? Nelufar, I'm going to start with you. Should we leave the ECHR?
I couldn't help but notice that Farage's tie there looked bejazzled, which was a bit weird. Moving on from that, listen, if it was good enough for Churchill, it's good enough for me, okay? Winston Churchill was a fan of the convention. He believed it was necessary, and he believed it was necessary for two really fundamental reasons, and I couldn't agree more with Churchill on this. Never again. That meant that no government should ever again have the right to dehumanize its people the way that Hitler witnessed happen in the years preceding. So the point of this isn't to give us rights back for ourselves. The European Convention and the European Court on Human Rights gives an individual the right to take its government to court as and when she may need to. So when I hear these politicians, and those two are brilliant examples, talking about it in those terms, they're not asking for your rights to be protected or mine. They are asking for impunity, and I find that disheartening to the extreme. And one final thing, if I may. Jenrick, I think said something like, the choice is clear, it's leave or remain. Remind you of anything? In fact, it's more than that, it's leave or die. What does this mean? The way that the politicians, especially on the right, talk about it, it's as though it's some kind of monster leering over the British legal system, when actually what it does, it allows us to hold accountable the governments that sometimes may be doing things bad to us. Never again is something we should apply, not just to that point in history, but forever onwards.
I do wonder whether leaving the European Court of Human Rights, something set up in the wake of World War II, is good at this moment in time, when we have a war in Ukraine, when we have the developments in the Middle East. Is this the right time to be leaving the ECHR?
Well, you made a very good point about the timing. It's absolutely right that Churchill had, the initial idea to create this. But in 1951, when it was ratified and set up, it was for two things: to protect Jewish people because of the Holocaust, and we only then realised the brutality with which Russia was being run. Russia had a huge stake in Europe because, of course, they were instrumental in defeating Hitler and took a huge price for it and ruled over hundreds of millions of people. Churchill could see this was going to be a huge problem of dictatorship, and that's why he was so keen to introduce this. But the European Court of Human Rights, set up in the 50s, is not the European Court of Human Rights today, which largely is abused by, for instance, somebody comes to this country who shouldn't be here, they get convicted of a crime, they serve their time, and then we say we're going to deport you when you come out. They apply to the European Court of Human Rights and say, my human rights are being violated. I don't want to leave Britain now because I might be persecuted if I go somewhere else about a country. It is abused terribly. It's run by a club of pro-Europeans. Those 46 judges we saw in that picture there.
48.
46 judges there. OK. Can I tell you that about 80% of them are not qualified to rule in a court in this country, the High Court or the Old Bailey, because they're legal advocates. and half of them have worked for the European Union in Brussels. Honestly, it's a European club set up to help and provide the Europeans control their bloc. It's not for our benefit.
OK, Julie from Kent, you're up first on the phones. What do you think about what Mike's just said?
I think that Mike is obviously a Brexit person, isn't he? He was agreeable about Brexit, whereas I
didn't vote Brexit, so please don't assume that. I did not vote for Brexit.
What did you vote then?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was only two options,
yeah, no, I didn't
Julie.
vote.
But that aside.
Well, that aside, yes. My opinion, I'm trained as a lawyer, and I think that it's good to be part of the European Court of Human Rights because it holds our government accountable for what they can and can't do. And for example, like, how much money did we spend on the Rwanda project when we should be employing more people in the Home Office to process asylum claims more quickly?
But Julie, but Julie, that was a decision that the government at the time made. That was the scheme that they wanted to launch in order to stop people from doing that crossing. They didn't want people crossing the channel, and they thought that might stop it. But that's the reason that people want to get rid of it. So you've really touched on the point there. The Rwanda scheme and the fact that the European Court of Human Rights said that it was not acceptable to send people to Rwanda. It isn't acceptable because we should process our claims in this country. We should employ people to do that in this country, you know. And if someone doesn't have the right to stay here, then we return them to another country. But if that country is dangerous, like look at Hong Kong, for example. Mm-hmm. We accepted lots of people from Hong Kong. Afghanistan, we let people down because they helped us try to defeat the Taliban. Mm-hmm. But what did we do with those people? So it's seriously important to have a set of judges above yourself and maybe even just be part of a community. But just to clarify on the Rwanda thing, the European Court of Human Rights did not say that you could not send people abroad to be processed. They said you could not send them to Rwanda. Rwanda was not, in their mind, a safe country to be able to do that too. So just to be very specific, even you disagree with the European Court of Human Rights on that point,
Sorry,
Julie?
just two things. We're using the words European Convention on Human Rights and the European Court of Human Rights. We're using them interchangeably, and they're not interchangeable. One is a set of rights that we have. Another is a legal body. The other. Yeah. So just another is a legal body. So, for example, we have the Human Rights Act here in the UK, which essentially takes the convention, let's call it, and says, yeah, British law, stamp of approval. And that's how we embody, that's how we ratify those laws. But we, as British citizens, have the right to take our government to court. The Rwanda scheme, I want to spend some time on that just for a second. It wasn't that the court, the European court, said that it was wrong or immoral. They said it was illegal. Mm-hmm. That what the British government what the British government were doing was they were going to pass a law with their majority that essentially lived in cuckoo land that said, we know it's not a safe country, but we're just going to say it is.
We should have ignored them.
And that was after the courts.
They did it twice or three times, right?
Yeah,
so
we should have ignored them.
One moment.
Yeah, sure.
One moment. The court decided that the British government was acting unlawfully. The British government now accepts that it acted unlawfully and it's not trying to make the Rwanda policy happen. So what does this prove? That different governments will try and move the goalposts. We need something that sits above that can make sure that the rights of all people are unimpinged, uninfringed in perpetuity. To your point on Churchill, you're right. He did see Russia as a big threat. He did see that I think he saw the millions of people that were going to be brutally murdered for that regime.
By Stalin,
and
you're right.
He predicted the future. We should trust in his instincts.
No, because it's changed so
It's exactly the same
it's
threat.
Not.
And
by the way, when you say that Tony Blair, embraced the European Court of Human Rights in '98, just a year after he got in, What we should be doing now is disassemble ourselves from that and have a UK human rights law.
We do.
No, we don't.
We have the human rights.
We don't. The human rights law that Tony Blair introduced is allied to the European Convention on Human Rights. We need a completely separate one so we can run our own country.
All right, I want to get another call in
country.
here. Julie, thank you very much for your call. Patricia from Edinburgh, what do you think about leaving the ECHR? Patricia? Patricia, are you there?
She's scared
in Edinburgh?
Hi, sorry.
Hi. Just switch your TV off in case that's the thing that caused you the delay, because there is a bit of a delay. Thank you. What do you think about leaving the ECHR?
I believe that we should stay. The European Human Rights Treaty was right in what Churchill said. What I'm really angry about is that Boris Johnson has decided he wants a referendum.
Why is that? Why is that annoying, Patricia? Isn't it good to have everybody have a say?
Yeah, if it's fair. The last time he let us have a referendum for independence, he lied to every single person in Scotland. If you vote no, you'll not leave Europe. You'll be still in Brexit. He lied.
Yeah, I mean, it's possibly true of all the recent referendums that we've had that fibs were told. I mean, maybe that is just the consequence of having a referendum. I'm not sure, Patricia.
It's also, can I just say, good on you, Mr. Johnson. How well timed with a memoir coming out very shortly to have these bombastic and audacious headlines where you call for these things. It's really well timed to Mr. Johnson's memoirs coming out soon.
Okay.